Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. The town hall is closed to the public. This meeting will be broadcast live, local access cable on ActonTV channel, or streaming online at the ActonTV YouTube live channel. And audio will be broadcast live on the radio on WAEM 94.9 FM. To participate remotely from a computer, please click on the link below to join the public meeting. Webinar https://zoom.us/j/503-918-785 or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Are there any citizens, David?
There's no one with their hand raised.
Okay. So, John, Town Manager update?
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity for this June 22nd, 5 o'clock meeting to give some updates. We are broadcast live on radio too today, like we normal, 94.9. We did have one new case today. There was a week or two where we didn't have any new cases. We had one last week and we had another new one today. So Heather is continuing to do her work and following up on COVID cases as they come in, and hopefully that they'll continue to stay low for the time being. As I mentioned, as we were getting ready, the second part of phase 2 starts today, which includes inside dining and personal care services. The governor announced it on Friday, so our team in the health department and otherwise have been working since then, over the weekend and all day today, trying to help our businesses get ready and open up today and make sure they all understand what's happening. So I think it's going pretty well. I haven't heard any issues. So start to see more businesses open up today, which is great.
John. So part 2 of phase 2 would allow businesses to reopen, shops.
Sorry, I should have been more specific. It's in dining or in restaurant dining with restrictions, and personal care services like nail salons and things like that with restrictions. And
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure the board knows great news about North Acton Fire Station. The design process completed, and we're out to bid right now. The bidding is about a month, and then we review the bids for about a month. So we're looking to award it in August, and hopefully we get some good pricing. And we'll get started before the fall really sets in. I hope that's the plan. Other news, the town meeting warrant should have arrived in everybody's mailboxes over the weekend. If not, hopefully it was there today. If you didn't get the warrant, please let us know, and it's also available online for our town meeting on next Monday night, June 29th. Today, we taped videos that are for the presentations that will be heard at town meeting. This will give residents an opportunity to see the presentations in advance and to formulate their thoughts and any questions that they have. We are encouraging people, if they do have questions, after they see the videos, which will be posted online starting tomorrow night, to contact the article sponsor as listed in the warrant and ask questions leading up to town meeting so that we can help continue to create more awareness and be responsive to any questions or concerns to make sure that the meeting that night is run as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. We also, our social media team posted a little video this morning to give people a sense of what town meeting is going to look like this year. So hopefully you see that if you're on Facebook or some of those other platforms. They do a great job of trying to spread the word. So thanks for that. Over the weekend, or recently, you saw a note about a dangerous dog hearing. That's tentatively scheduled for early August, August 3rd. We'll give you more information about that as we get closer to the hearing date. I became aware recently of Mothers Out Front, who are doing a canary tree campaign. And I think starting in July, they'll be highlighting over 100 trees in Acton that were impacted by natural gas leaks to try to help the community understand that when you see a tree that's dying near a natural gas leak, they call it a canary tree. So look out for those this summer. Look out for that notification, and the Mothers Out Front is going to be providing a lot more information about that in the coming weeks. One other item, the Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito announced the Shared Spaces grant program last week. The grant round opened today. The grant provides for between $5,000 and $300,000 for communities to improve spaces and traffic calming for bicycle and pedestrian accommodations near business centers or mobile transit centers and other improvements that we want to try out on a temporary basis and potentially keep permanently. So we have working with a consultant. They actually provide consultants through the program, which is great because we're a little bit short on engineering staff right now, but we have someone already lined up to help us, and we're going to be putting in an application, and I look forward to sharing it with you before we do to get any input or support from the board. But it's an opportunity for us to do. We have traffic calming needs and pedestrian safety needs all over the community, as you know, and this is just another resource that we hope to try to access to tackle some of those in the short term. Those are the general operational updates for tonight. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Any citizens, David?
Nope, still none.
Okay, let's move to announcing volunteers of the year. John Benson?
Yeah, this is an award that we instituted I think the first recipients were in 2018. It's an award that Peter engineered and brought to fruition. It's named for, one of our forebears, Francis Faulkner, and it's basically the Francis Faulkner Service Award, honoring those people who have devoted considerable time and effort over the years in town service as members of town boards and committees. And, I found that over the last 2 years, the recipients are extremely honored and pleased to receive these awards. So we have 5 new Faulkner Award recipients. And Joan, let's start with you, and we'll work around the room.
Okay. Carolyn Patrick on the Historic District Commission. Carolyn has been a volunteer for a number of years. She's also been very active in the Acton Women's Club, and I salute her commitment to the town.
That's pretty. Okay, David?
So my award goes to Bill McGinnis, who's the chair of the Board of Health during, unfortunately for him, during this COVID-19 situation. Bill moved to Acton with his family 32 years ago, which happens to be the same as me. His 3 daughters graduated from the AB High School. Bill's been a member of the Board of Health for nearly 2 decades. And at the beginning of this year, just in time for the pandemic, his fellow board members selected him to be chair. I've been impressed with Bill's steady hand during this state of emergency. In its once or twice, even twice weekly meetings since April, the board has made numerous decisions. They've had to figure out how the governor's statewide orders apply to the town. Bill makes sure that all the points of view are heard and guides the board to a decision. The meetings are sometimes contentious, but Bill never lets them get out of hand. As the liaison to the Board of Health, I have to confess to contributing to the contention myself occasionally. Bill typifies the excellence of committee volunteers in Acton. He's the type of person that makes things work in the town. He told me that he feels like he gets a lot out of being a member of the Board of Health, including proving his skills as a consensus builder. Congratulations, Bill.
Dean? Dean?
My nominee for this year is Mike Majors. Mike is a very long time resident of the town of Acton. He's a highly decorated combat veteran of the Vietnam War. He has served for many years on the Finance Committee. He has also served for many years on the Economic Development Committee. And he continues to be involved in a lot of other volunteer events that are not necessarily tied in with the town. I've been working with him recently on, or until COVID hit, on the Big Bird Committee, attempting to find some way of commemorating Carol Spinney, who, as everyone knows, was Big Bird for many years on Sesame Street. Mike's been involved in that. And he's also been involved in some of the local political action committees here in town. So, excellent person, and I'm so glad that he's a neighbor, a friend, and an Acton resident.
Peter?
Okay, I want to nominate Bob Whittlesey, who's a member of the Acton Housing Authority. Bob has an amazing life story, and he is an authentic American hero. You can read about it in Bob's book called Social Housing Found, which is available on Amazon. Here's Bob dedicating the Whittlesey housing development, the new Acton Housing Authority family apartments. Bob was born in 1921. He left Princeton University to enlist in the Army. And so Bob found himself in the Battle of the Bulge in 1944. He was the mailman for his unit. And one day the unit occupied a large mansion and set up a kitchen in the garage. Bob went off to collect the mail and some supplies. And when he returned, he immediately knew something was wrong. Let me read a little bit from his book. Something was wrong. I stopped abruptly, jumped out of the Jeep, and ran up the stairs into the mansion. Inside, I found my comrades crowded along the walls of the main hall. I was told that the men had lined up for evening meal at 5 o'clock. They had set up the kitchen in the garage, and that the Germans sent an artillery shell over the house, and a second later, a shell that hit the kitchen. When we came out and looked around, we discovered that the shell had killed the whole kitchen crew. These guys had been my constant companions. I also realized that if I had not been away, I would have been in that chow line. War is just a matter of luck. Not only Bob, but the whole country, and particularly Acton, was lucky that day. Bob went on to envision and lead nonprofit, non-governmental organizations financing and developing affordable housing. Bob was and is a nationally recognized expert. Bob has received many awards for his leadership on economic development and affordable housing. Bob's been a member of the Acton Housing Authority since 2003 and was a member of the Acton Community Housing Corporation from 2001 through 2006. Bob's knowledge of affordable housing financing contributed in large part to redeveloping the former Acton High School building into 16 apartments for low-income families. Bob also led the effort to build the Housing Authority's newest development of 12 family affordable apartments, appropriately named Whittlesey Village. So Bob, thank you for your service. We all hope you reach your goal of serving on the Housing Authority's board until you are 100. With pleasure and gratitude for all you've done for the town, the Select Board recognizes and honors you with one of this year's Colonel Francis Faulkner Jr. Service Awards.
Thank you. My Faulkner Award recipient for 2020 is Derek Chen. Derek was born in Jamaica, where he attended a Jesuit high school and graduated at age 15 as class valedictorian. Derek was accepted at MIT as a sophomore transfer student and moved to the United States. He graduated in 3 years with a degree in electrical engineering. Derek was employee number 57 at the old Digital Equipment Corporation. Derek and his wife Erica moved to Acton in 1976. Their daughter Lauren attended the AB schools. Derek retired in 2003 as a senior engineering manager and since has pursued his hobby, stock market investing. Derek's town service began in 2008 as a worker for the Acton Board of Health, Health Flu Shot Days, and Hazardous Material Days. Derek was appointed to the Planning Board in December 2009 and has served continuously since. He is currently the Planning Board's chair. Derek has taken on Planning Board liaison assignments to the Economic Development Committee, the Kelly's Corner Steering Committee, and the Board of Water Commissioners. In addition, Derek has worked the polls for the town clerk on election days, served as a counselor for the AB Rotary Club's Reality Fair, and was an active outreach participant in making our new senior center a reality. After working with Derek on the EDC, the KCSC, and my Selectmen's campaign in 2018, I've nicknamed Derek the Energizer Bunny. Derek, thank you for your service. So, is Bob Van Meter available now?
He is.
Yes. Okay, if we could let Bob in. Bob has served for well over 20 years on the Acton Community Housing Corporation. He's been Nancy's deputy. Nancy is stepping down after over 20 years, and we thought a tribute from Bob on Nancy's behalf was most appropriate. Bob?
Okay, thank you, John. And thank you to the Board of Selectmen. I come before you tonight to honor a true hero who has served both the town of Acton and the cause of making Acton an inclusive community, Nancy Tavernier. Nancy is stepping down as the chair of the Acton Community Housing Corporation after more than 20 years in that role. She began her commitment to affordable housing well before she became chair of the ACHC. During the 12 years she served on the Board of Selectmen from 1987 to 1999. She worked with the late Betty McManus to create the Housing Partnership Committee, which then became the Acton Community Housing Corporation. As some of you know, Nancy's service to the town goes all the way back to 1975 and encompasses much more than affordable housing, as Janet Adachi attested to last year when she nominated Nancy as one of Acton's Volunteer of the Year Faulkner Award recipients. But this evening, I want to focus on her work for affordable housing. I've had the pleasure of serving alongside her on the board of Acton Community Housing Corporation for more than 10 years and have the utmost respect for her tireless efforts to help create more high-quality affordable homes here in Acton. I know I speak for all the other board members of the Acton Community Housing Corporation in expressing our deepest thanks to Nancy for all that she's done over the more than 20 years she served as chair of ACHC. Nancy is able to think both about the big picture, how will Acton achieve our overall goals for housing, overseeing the creation of a housing production plan for the town, negotiating resources for affordable housing with developers and town boards, while at the same time, she also pays attention to all of the details. Those details including making sure that a check is ready for closing for a family that is a first-time homebuyer of an affordable unit, or ensuring that the ACHC is in compliance with the myriad requirements of the Commonwealth's open meeting law. Her work to advance affordable housing in Acton was recognized a few years ago by the Massachusetts Housing Partnership at their statewide Housing Institute. She has tremendous empathy for the families that ACHC works with. When a family runs into difficulty, Nancy talks with them and figures out how ACHC can provide a helping hand. She is always a careful steward of the resources for affordable housing on behalf of the town, making sure that families use the resources effectively. Nancy's previous career as a reference librarian has come in handy as the town's one-woman historian and resource on affordable housing. For years, Nancy had boxes and boxes of records for the ACHC in her home, but she has embraced the digital world and got boxes and boxes of records scanned for the ACHC, which I'm sure was a relief to her husband, Dick. It must have freed up at least one room in their home. I think she told us recently that she had only one filing cabinet of ACHC materials left. Nancy has spent the better part of a year making sure that the Town of Acton and the Acton Community Housing Corporation can continue and preserve her legacy. As the vice chair of the ACHC, I participated in her efforts. It is notable that it will take at least 6 different people on the planning staff of the town, at the Regional Housing Service Organization, and on the ACHC board to keep up with what Nancy was doing all by herself for the last 20 years. Fortunately for all of us, Nancy has agreed to continue as treasurer of the ACHC for at least 1 year, even though she will no longer serve on the ACHC board. I know that Janet Adachi and I and the rest of the board are grateful that our goodbye is not final. I know you'll join me in thanking Nancy for all she's accomplished on behalf of the housing and make it an inclusive community. Thanks.
Bob, thank you very much. Is Nancy available at all?
Yes, just a second.
Nancy, would you like to say a few words?
She's just unmuting, I think. There you go.
I'm absolutely speechless.
No.
That's the last time you saw that.
Never.
And I've told my granddaughters that this will be on tonight, so they're anxiously awaiting the link. And I don't know what to say. So thank you all. And thank you, Bob, for your support all these years, and the committee itself. The most loyal committee, I think, that there is in town. And it's been a wonderful experience, I have to say. I'm winding down. I sent a notice out today to all the town departments telling them, don't call me anymore. Here's the number you can call. And it's been wonderful. And I thank you so much for your respect for what we do. And the final step in my career was the approval of the housing production plan very quickly by DHCD, and they were very complimentary about it. So you all helped bring that forward, and that'll be something I always remember. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, and we appreciate your long service to the town.
Thanks,
Yes,
Joe.
thank you.
Thank you.
David, would you introduce Peter?
Yes, I will, but can I ask one question first of John Mangiarotti? Since we can't just hand them over in room 204, how do the people who've received the Faulkner Awards receive their piece of paper?
Lisa will be contacting them tomorrow. We will follow up on that.
Thank you. Okay. So, during the time that he served in Acton, Peter has been in numerous different roles, and has often blazed a trail. He's been on the ACHC that we were just talking about at the time that they were converting the old high school to family housing. Peter is definitely a supporter of family housing, as he has also been counsel to both the Boston and Cambridge housing authorities. He served as the first chair of the CPC, shepherding the first plan, basically inventing the process that we use today. He started SATSAC to make improvements to this train station, and he was the first chair there, where I was also a member. He's a member of the Killings Corner Committee. And recently he's been dealing with the dam issues as chair of the 53 River Street Committee. During 2 stints for a total of 9 years on the select board, Peter has contributed mightily to the town of Acton. While serving with him, I've been impressed with his pride in the town and in the institution of the Board of Selectmen. While working with Peter on the board, I've also grown to appreciate and learn from his lawyerly eye towards issues. He evaluates what's proper, allowed, complete, etc., in all the actions that we take. I just hope that I've learned enough to do some. Peter must be a history buff. I've been present when he's been the speaker at a number of events around town, like the opening of the train station and other things. He tells stories, historical stories that are fascinating. I remember one in particular about the bayonets that the Acton companies carried at the Old North Bridge. That's just one. I mean, there are a number, so I would like to thank Peter for all the time and effort that he's given to the town. I'll very much miss you being around, and I hope I can call you from time to time to ask advice. I don't know if other members of the board also have recollections about Peter.
Dean?
Yeah, I know Peter from his long involvement with the Conservation Commission, and how very much involved he was in environmental issues here in town. And so that's kind of the lens I've always seen him in. In addition to the fine work that he did, he was still on the Community Preservation Committee when I became an associate member. And certainly his, in addition to the affordable housing elements, his environmental credentials are wonderful. And from a practical point of view and a real feeling of empathy for our environment. So I congratulate Peter for that.
I'm going to say something. When I was first elected to the board in 2018, I went to my rookie camp for new select board members, and Peter's law partner, Paul Durenis, who's been like a 28-year selectman in Dover or Sherburne. And I went up and introduced myself and talked about our Peter connection. And he goes, Peter, he is a very wise man. And and you know, knowing him since Nancy and I ran his first campaign for selectman in 2007, and over the last 2 years, you know, working together, I, you know, repeatedly looked at him when we had these municipal law issues. And I said, well, Peter, okay, what do you think? Could you guide us? And he's like our, I guess this shows our ages. He's like our Senator Sam Ervin, you know, full of, you know, wiseness and good common sense.
Well, it's been a pleasure over the last 3-4 years now working with you, Peter, and I have always respected your comments during the discussions. So thank you for your many, many contributions to the town.
You're on.
Okay.
Well, thank you all. You know, I think it's been a great board to work with. I think one of the keys, I mean, I can disagree with positions that other members have on the board, but we're respectful of each other. We listen to each other's opinions. I've had my mind changed. Maybe I've changed other people's minds at times. But again, whatever position we finally come out with individually, we certainly respect each other's reasons for doing that. I moved to Acton in 1988. In those days, I was working in affordable housing issues. Actually, let me go back a little farther than that, just to digress. I came out of the Vietnam War in the U.S. Marines in 1969, came to Boston, went immediately to college. At that point, there were 200,000 people marching in the streets against the war, against racism. Sam Ervin was running the Watergate hearings. And, you know, I decided to get involved. And somehow I worked my way into local municipal government issues, continued to work in the legal field representing cities and towns. And since I moved to Acton, I've been on a board, different board, pretty much the entire time I've been here, which is a lot of night meetings. One thing about working with local government is it's very rewarding, and I've never lost that feeling of driving by the train station or the old high school, riding my bike on the Bruce Freeman Trail up to Chelmsford, and now looking forward to the new Kelly's Corner development. The memories that I have of working with our great town staff and our great members of various boards is extremely rewarding. There's nothing like looking at a structure or an edifice that you helped build in the first place to give you a feeling of worth. So, I also am patriotic. I mean, I think this is an experiment. Freedom is not free, as we know from the 3 Acton citizens who led the assault against the regulars at Concord. Isaac Davis, Abner Hosberg, Luther Blanchard, all killed in the initial assault. They weren't afraid to go. So, to me, that commitment to continuing this experiment of democracy, particularly at the local level of town meeting, which is a shining light for the entire world, is what I've worked for, and I certainly would encourage everyone to educate yourself about the issues, get involved, and go out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Now we go on to adopting best practice areas for under Community Compact Best Practice Program. John?
Hi, thank you. So, and Mr. Barry, it's been a pleasure working with you. And this isn't our last meeting together, but it's pretty close. So thank you for bringing me here, or helping to bring me here last year or 2 years ago. It's been a pleasure over the last 2 years, and I appreciate your guidance and your leadership. I look forward to working with you in other ways when you're off the board. I'm sure I'll be seeing you. With regards to the item here, the Community Compact Best Practices is a program that the Governor Baker introduced shortly after he was elected. Acton did adopt the best practice related to transportation several years ago and implemented all of the work that was suggested. But we have not adopted any new best practices in the latest rounds. And I think as an organization, we strive to do several of the best practices that they listed on the website. We had a discussion with the board in September and again in November of last year, where we talked about supporting seniors and environmental issues and all kinds of different things that we're always working on. And I think the best practice program will help you highlight things and maybe help you get access to funding for things that you have an immediate need for. So what I'm asking the board to consider tonight is to adopt 2 best practices. The first is the one under financial management best practices. Now, I think we have a very strong financial management process, and we do capital planning. We do a nice job with it. We've rolled out a 5-year planning program in the last few years, and I think it's really helped us look down the line and understand what our future investments are. But I'd like to take our planning process to the next level. And this is consistent with the Board of Selectmen goals from about 2 years ago, which was to develop a long-term capital plan. And I know this is something that the Finance Committee has asked for and looks to in several of their documents and presentations. So the best practice that I would recommend is prepare a capital improvement plan that reflects the community's needs, is reviewed and updated annually, and fits within a financing plan that reflects the community's ability to pay. That's pretty straightforward, and as I mentioned, we pretty much do that anyways. But adopting as a best practice will allow us to work with the consultant and sort of refine the process, make it more inclusive, create what the Finance Committee has asked for, which is essentially a scorecard of how the projects are going. And it's something I'd really like to pursue next year if the board is interested in adopting that. And the second one, and in terms of energy and environmental best practices, we could have adopted any number of a dozen, because I think there's a lot of great work that's being done right now by the Green Advisory Board and by several other people in the organization. The Board of Selectmen showed a lot of leadership in this area by adopting that policy in 2018. And this best practice would be to plan ahead to mitigate climate change by establishing goals, creating an action plan, assigning responsibility, and tracking progress. Now that could have been taken right out of the Board of Selectmen's policy because it's pretty much what you've asked me to do as the town manager. And Selectman Berry has been working with me as sort of an ad hoc group with some other folks to try to advance that work. And I think there's some funding in the 21 budget that we'll be discussing next week to help advance that work. And I think adopting this best practice will help as well because it'll align us for opportunities for technical and maybe financial resources to help pursue that goal. So as I mentioned in my memo to you over the weekend or last week, the funding for the program is still in play this fiscal year, which ends in 8 days. And I believe that if we put something in, we may be successful in getting the grant funding to help. And I have a scope that I work for a capital improvement plan, working with the Collins Center, which is another governmental organization out of UMass Boston, where they have a lot of great work, that they do a lot of great work. And they've worked with Medford and a few other communities to do this, and they'd be willing to work with us. So tonight I'm asking the board to consider two things, or I guess one thing, is to adopt two best practices underneath the Commonwealth's best practice program.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the board adopt the financial management best practice and the energy and environmental best practice, greenhouse gas reduction, and authorize the town manager to file applications for funding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
Mr. Berry,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Trotter, aye, unanimous.
All right, go for it, John.
Thank you. We'll get to work on it right away. I guess right away. I guess we have to. Thanks.
Now we want to talk about the Small Business Grant Program Awards.
Yes, thank you. So we had the lottery for the Small Business Grant Awards last Thursday. There were 44 companies that were deemed eligible for this program. Joan, as chair, helped draw names from the hat to identify the position for the 44 firms, with the idea being that the first 25 would be able to access the $100,000 in funds that the Board of Selectmen voted to make available for this program. And so I wanted to share with you the list of those 44 and the ones that are online as the top 25, which I can do in a moment. But I wanted to make the board aware of some work that we're doing to access this funding. So as you know, this was the CARES Act funds where the federal program set aside just under $2.1 million for the town of Acton. And they announced the regulations and the guidance for how it could be used in late May. We brought it to the board, a few ideas. One of them was a rental assistance program, and the second was a small business grant assistance program. We then came, I think, a week or two ago and asked for authorization to submit the request for the funding to the state, because even though it's federal aid, it's actually the state is serving as the gatekeeper for this CARES Act funding. And so when we submitted that, we got feedback actually late Friday that they weren't comfortable with the plan for the small business grants and using that for CARES Act funding. So we believe, and council has advised us, that the federal program clearly allows for that. And the guidance that was published by the state didn't say that it was prohibited. And so we're in the process right now of working with DOR to try to straighten that out. So I just wanted to mention that to the board now, that I know that we were talking about next steps as part of this agenda item. I'd rather hold off on next steps until we get this issue resolved with DOR, which I think we can do hopefully in the next few days. I know town council was on the phone with them for a few meetings today, and we're hoping to follow up again tomorrow. But I just want to make the board aware of that we're having a little issue with the state releasing that funding. So just want to make you aware of that. We have notified people that were in the top 25. Let me share my screen here for a second to show you the. Is this sharing? No. Okay, so it's probably hard to read. Let me make it bigger. So you can see that. So basically, those were the top, lottery position. It was drawn number 1, and then we go all the way down to number 25, and those are the ones that we envision being able to access the grant funding. The next steps that we've identified for this process are to, first of all, get the CARES Act money in the town accounts, which we're hoping to figure out how to finalize that in the short term. And then secondly, each of these businesses would have to execute a grant agreement with us, a grant agreement that council has created based on the compliance and reporting requirements that the board approved for this program. So those are the next steps that we have. And I guess if you look all the way down the list, those are the 44 firms. So any questions about that? It's not, I wanted to have a more exciting update for you tonight, but that's where I am with this program for now. It's a great program, and we're hoping to resolve these issues shortly to get this funding out.
Any questions? John?
Yeah. So John, the federal CARES regulations said that our small business program is permissible. It complies. So the way that we read the federal guidelines is that it was not anything that was prohibited, and it was a use that fell within uses that were appropriate. It wasn't specifically called out as something you can do, but it was. That's why the board took a vote, I think, at the May 26th meeting that it was something that is necessary. There was specific language that we needed the board to use in that vote, so that it was necessary given the pandemic. And given that declaration by the board, that was what we understood needed to use the CARES money for that. I think at the state level, there's been a lot of different requests, and I think they're trying to manage it in a way that, in this case, is creating a challenge for us, but I think we can work through it. So the state said to you that our program didn't fit the state's guidelines, is that it?
Right, but then when we asked them to identify which guideline didn't fit, it wasn't really one that they could point to say it's prohibited here. It isn't. So I think the biggest issue for them is that and why we had to carefully craft the program, and why council advised us very strongly to make sure that in these awards and in the application, you make sure that people do not get this funding and then use it for an expense that they would have had covered otherwise through the PPP program or through other federal programs. So there's a lot of concern, I think, at the state level about communities taking the money and giving it out to folks and then having it be used twice for the same expense. I tried to explain, and we tried to explain that we've implemented several controls and compliance requirements, and I think our work now is to get them comfortable with what those are.
Okay, that's really good work, and thank Nina.
Anyone else? Okay, you don't need any further from us. Okay.
Not this time.
Okay, now a virtual meeting for the Acton Nursing Services Advisory Committee.
Oh, yes. They just asked to be released from the list of people that can meet virtually.
They want to be released?
Oh, they want to be allowed to. So they have never asked during this pandemic, which most of them have by this point.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Yes, so moved that the Acton Nursing Service be permitted to hold virtual meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Barry,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Trotter, aye, unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Now, reconsider the implementation of the plastic bag ban on July 1st, 2020. Peter?
Yeah, I asked for this to be put on the agenda. If you look at the backup that's in the DocuShare to this agenda item, this is from the Green Acton board. Let's see, I guess I got the wrong thing up here. Okay. We first voted to not enforce the plastic bag ban based on a recommendation from the Board of Health, which I understood the consensus at that time was that reusable bags could transmit the COVID virus to people who work in grocery stores. Shortly after we made that decision not to enforce our own bylaw, the governor came out with a order that included not allowing any local towns to enforce their plastic bag ban bylaws. So what the Green Acton board is asking is that we just adopted that non-enforcement provision until July 1st. They're asking that we let that expire on July 1st and go and have the plastic bag ban bylaw again on the books. That would still leave the state prohibition against local bylaws in place, but as soon as the state lifts that, then the town could then again enforce the bylaw. So I'm in favor of that. They do cite some information on the CDC's website that, and there's a link to their website here in the Green Advisory Board, or the Green Acton Board's recommendation or request. And the CDC does say that transitory contact with materials is a low risk concern for contacting coronavirus. So this is just lifting our own non-enforcement of the ban against plastic bags until the state allows us to enforce it again, which case it would just go into effect immediately. They're also asking, if you read the backup, that we put on the town's website information. It basically says, it's got a link to the CDC advisory that says that it's a low risk. The language is the Town of Acton considers single-use plastic checkout bags to be wasteful and harmful to the environment. The town has banned use of single-use plastic checkout bags at stores and restaurants. However, this ban is currently suspended because of the pandemic. Until the ban resumes, the town recommends that residents use the following sustainable and safe practices if possible. Put purchases directly into shopping carts and transfer to bags or boxes in your car, or wash reusable bags frequently. So I'm okay with putting that language. I don't know how people feel about putting it on the website. It does not recommend that people use reusable bags. It recommends that you put the purchases, instead of the plastic bags, put your purchases in your cart, take them to your car, and put them in your bags there. And wash your bags frequently. Cites the CDC's advisory, which I think we can rely on. So I would recommend lifting our non-enforcement provision on July 1st, and I would also recommend adding this information to the town's website.
Is that a motion, Peter? David?
Sure.
So, this was discussed at the Board of Health meeting last week. They were in general agreement, but felt two things. One is they believe that the governor's suspension of local plastic bags laws is going to be lifted concurrent with phase 3. And they also felt that that the various stores in town need some notice in order to be able to manage their stock of plastic bags and other things. So one thing we could consider, and it also, I think, this is my personal thing, gets a little confusing having the governor's order in place and our order now rescinded. So we could vote to lift our non-enforcement concurrent with the implementation of phase 3. Just another idea. I'm not. Either way is actually fine with me.
Any, Dean?
Yeah, I agree with David about that. I think it's a good point. I was going to raise that whole issue as well. With the uncertainty of our merchants, they stock up in plastic bags, and then the governor tells everybody on Saturday, well, gee, on Monday we're going to reinstitute all of these plastic bag bans, and people are stuck with huge amounts of stock, and they've already been faced with a lot of economic disruption. So I think the longer time frame, as David suggested, makes a lot of sense to me to give our merchants a little bit of a break here.
Anyone else? David?
So at the suggestion of a town resident, I've been practicing that technique that Peter mentioned, where I leave my groceries in the cart and I push it out to my car and I put it in them in reusable bags in my car, and that works fine for me. So that's a good thing. There's also one hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
It's Tara, and I was waiting to speak about the community compact, and I can address my question on email, but relative to the plastic bag ban, they've had a break. We've had capitalism, we've had a break for however many years, polluting the earth and creating trash and petroleum waste and fossil fuel burning. We got to stop using these plastic bags, and I hope that you vote to lift the ban on the ban. Thank you.
Anyone else, David?
No one else, John.
Okay. So, Peter, do you have a motion?
I don't have a serious problem with saying we wait until the state lifts it and that our enforcement goes into effect again, consistent with the state reopening phase 3, I guess. There's not much different. It might give the merchants more notice. No difference from our perspective, since we couldn't start enforcing it again until the state allows us. So I'm okay with that. So I would make a motion that we lift the local non-enforcement of the plastic bag ban as soon as the state lifts their order that towns not enforce it. I'd also would recommend that the town put this language that Green Acton is asking on the town's website.
Is there motion made and seconded? Any further discussion?
Yes. So Peter, what we're doing is we're lifting the local non-enforcement of the plastic bag ban at such time as the state lifts their ban. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what my motion was. I agree.
Okay.
That, it's good to give merchants some notice, and I'm hoping that the state will publicize that as soon as phase 3 goes into effect, that towns can once again start enforcing their plastic bag ban.
When is phase?
Merchants have that.
When is phase 3 due to go in?
I don't have an exact date.
Okay.
Okay, Dean, will you call the roll?
Will. Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Benson.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. Trotter. Aye.
All right, motion carried. Extending current volunteer term expirations to July 13th, 2020.
There's some people, I think, that were resigning from their positions may not appreciate the extra 2 weeks of service, but what we're looking to do here is just have a little breathing room with what's going on in town hall, and we're trying to get people sworn in virtually and things like that. And if the board is willing, we would appreciate another 2 weeks just to sort these things out.
I think that's appropriate. I've had to stay on as chairman for. All right. Do you need a motion on this?
I think that most terms would expire on June 30th, so I think
Yeah.
it's probably.
Okay.
I think it's a comment I want to make after the vote here.
Okay. What's the, David?
I move that we extend the volunteer terms that were due to expire on June 30th until July 13th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Benson.
Aye.
Mr. Berry.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Ms. Gardner.
Aye.
Mr. Trotter. Aye. Unanimous.
Thank.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to mention at this point my own role on some of these boards. There are several boards that I sit on that I sit as a selectman because the charge to those committees requires that a selectman be a member of the board. 53 River Street requires that a selectman be a member of that board. The Health Insurance Trust requires that a selectman be a member of that board. I've talked to John about that. He's been coming to some of the meetings. I've been sending the information of 53 River Street to David to bring him up to speed. It's obviously up to you folks who you want to appoint. I'll be resigning from them as soon as I go off this board. I am a member of the School Building Committee. I'm not sure whether the State School Building Authority actually requires a select board member to be on that board. I've talked to Mary Brolin about it. She's trying to figure out whether that's required or not. Certainly the select board may want to have one of your members sit on that board. I don't necessarily have to resign. I did not get appointed by this board to sit on that board. I think it was the school committee that makes the appointments. There is a vacancy, so I could resign and take that vacancy, or well, I don't know how it works, but this board could appoint another member to fill that vacancy if that's required, or you might be able to just appoint me as your representative, but all that will have to be figured out as you reorganize.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to take any actions there? I mean, I would volunteer to sit in on the 53 River Street meetings until such time as we decide official committee assignments after town meeting. I could also potentially do the school building committee as well.
So when we reorganize, David, I think we can take all this into consideration and make the assignment.
So I just think that Peter was pointing out that there could be a gap, right? So if we don't decide until 1 or 2 meetings after a town meeting, there could be a gap where there isn't either the committee's charge, a couple committees' charge requires that a select board member be on that there, and there wouldn't be one. Anyway, I'm happy whatever the board thinks, but I would be happy to do those 2 things if people want.
Okay,
And I would be happy to do the health insurance trust, but I think they're not due to meet again until late August.
Yeah.
So we'll sort that out by then.
My experience is this board pretty much reorganizes and would make those appointments at the first meeting after the.
Right.
Town. I don't think 53 River Street has any meetings scheduled other than the HDC meeting. That's the 25th. The HIT, is not meeting until late in July. I think September actually is when they schedule the next meeting. But the school building authority is continuing to meet every other week as they're getting into construction now. That'll have to be resolved pretty quickly.
okay.
But I take it you're interested in continuing to serve on the school building committee?
I would be, yeah. I've been on there since the beginning, so it's nice to again go through construction and see the when you do all that work to get there. So, but
Okay.
if possible, and still appoint a member of the select board. I'll keep in touch with you, Joan, about what I learned from
Okay.
Mary.
Great, thank you. All right, consent items. 9, approve meeting minutes, May 18th and May 26th, 2020. 10, accept gift planning department for $22,320 from Verizon Wireless toward the sidewalk fund as stated in the planning board number 1905, condition number 311. Is there a motion?
I move to approve consent items 9 and 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds. Any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Berry,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Trotter, aye, unanimous.
All right. Now we need a motion to adjourn the public meeting and then a motion to go into executive session. And the executive
Do we adjourn the public meeting, or is it a motion to go into executive session, and then when we come out of executive session, we come back into regular session for the purpose of adjourning?
Yeah. So there's a need for an executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the fire union in the matter pending IAFF Local 1904 and the Town of Acton HM 19-7677 under Purpose 3 as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town.
I move to enter executive session for said reason.
Is there a second? Peter seconds. Any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Berry,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Trotter, aye, unanimous.
Okay, we are now in executive session.
We just have to make sure that all the attendees are gone and that the TV is gone and the radio is gone.
You've been getting some
Yeah,
spam stuff here.
yeah. Mark stopped that after it got going.